In the God Wars dungeon, there is a huge Org. He is the only one left from his race that we know of, and his name is General Grador. Before, he was fighting endlessly in the God Wars dungeon. He was the greatest general of a bloodthirsty god called Bandos. Most of the humans have forgotten all about Bandos and his contribution to the God Wars that engulfed the Third Age in terror and almost destroyed Runescape. But without many even knowing it, Bandos has played one of the biggest parts in the war, and behind the scenes, he made sure that the war would be as bloody as it could be. Bandos, often referred to as the Big High War God, was the god of war, a very powerful, manipulative, and bloodthirsty entity known for taking pleasure in conflict and slaughter. He demanded worship and unquestioned obedience. Luckily, there is no lack of manuscripts surrounding Bandos, and there is also some information about his early life, so we can paint a clear picture of Bandos's life. Bandos was born into a small tribe known as the Kal-i-Kra, which belonged to a race of warlike and aggressive creatures. When he was still a child, he liked to play with miniature clay Kal-i-Kra, and he made them fight against miniature clay Gozor, an enemy tribe, often smashing them in the process. At the age of 10, he was deemed old enough to be trained in combat, at which he excelled. Soon after, Bandos's father, the chieftain of the Kal-i-Kra, was extremely wounded after an attack by a Gozor. Seeing that his tribe was now being run by a sickened cripple, Bandos killed his father, claiming to have given him an honorable death, and was subsequently made the new chieftain of the Kal-i-Kra. This makes us believe that Bandos has no attachment of any kind or any kind of morals. Bandos and his tribute continued to fight the Gozor, this time using Bandos's superior tactics. While these were effective, they also usually involved sacrificing his own troops to mislead the Gozor, and thus Bandos quickly defeated it. After that, Bandos killed all of the other tribes on the continent, till one tribe remained, where he committed an unspeakable act. Bandos entered the house of the fallen tribe and saw a child. The terrified calf, hoping to be left alive in return, told him about a group of mystic nomads that would visit the Haida Idar on occasion, a group known as the caretakers of Jodu Otoku, who supposedly knew where the protector of the world could be found. After learning all he could from the calf, Bandos killed him. Bandos spared no one, not even kids. Bandos attacked the caretakers, and one of the old nomads thrusted his horn into one of Bandos's 4 eyes, destroying it. After that, Bandos killed them all and went after the god. As he was about to kill it, the old god telepathically warned Bandos that if he would be slain, the world would die with him. But Bandos ignored the warning. After Bandos killed the god, asteroids fell from the sky, annihilating all living things on the planet and laying waste to all settlements. Bandos, now a god, emerged from the cave and happily observed his dying world. The clan that Bandos ruled was also killed, but he still enjoyed seeing all the deaths. After Bandos became a god, he set off into the multiverse to search for a new world he could submit to his rule. Just before the Second Age, Bandos discovered the prosperous realm of Ubiusk, which was inhabited by relatively peaceful races such as Goblins, Ogres, and Orks, who lived in primitive tribal communities as hunter-gatherers. In current-day Runescape, the Goblins and Ogres are one of the most aggressive creatures and thirst for war. Ubiusk was a rich and fertile land. Bandos was appalled by the primitive nature of its inhabitants and decided to introduce them to civilization, intending to use them as his toys. All the races were initially peaceful and attempted to settle their conflict with diplomacy rather than war. As Bandos took over, however, he forced them to resort to violence on each occasion. Soon afterward, the realm dissolved into a world of pure war, leaving little trace of its once pristine looks. Bandos divided the races of Ubiusk in tribes, each to live separately. Gradually, all traces of the race once being united disappeared, and Ubiusk trembled with warfare. Bandos divided the Goblins into 12 tribes and organized them. For thousands of years, Bandos ruled Ubiusk, his followers soon becoming reliant on warfare and losing their skills in almost everything else. They built statues and other structures of him in worship and fought each other in recognition of his glory. Bandos was able to turn the beautiful planet into a planet of war and destruction, and he wanted to do the same for the new planet he saw called Gielinor. Somewhere in the Second Age, Bandos noticed that the Guardian of Gielinor called Guthix had left and decided that this was his chance to take ownership. Then, Bandos decided to bring many of his followers to Gielinor. Before the God Wars even began, Bandos used clever but cruel strategies to defeat his opponents, such as Saradomin and Armadil. During the God Wars, Bandos seemed to fight only for the battles and bloodshed. He allied himself with both sides and switched between sides many times. He wanted to see as much destruction and killing as he could. Sometimes when the battle was over, he attacked his allies just to prolong the battle. The Goblins were the lowest in the ranks of Bandos' army, used primarily as skirmishers or scouts. Typically, large numbers of Goblins were sent into battle ahead of the Ogres and Orks as a mean of weakening and disorganizing the foe. The Goblins thought that their big high war god cared about them, but he only saw them as living weapons. Often, the Goblins were sent into battles that Bandos knew they had no chance of winning, just because Bandos wanted to see the bloodshed. By the end of the wars, millions of Goblins had died. The Gielinorian Orgs had become extinct, except for General Grador, who was frozen in the God Wars dungeon, as well as a small group of Org shamans. General Grador at one point became chief of his tribe after Bandos had encouraged him to challenge the previous chief in a dream. As General Grador fought and won more and more battles, Bandos came to him and once more told him to go to a nearby town. Grador raided the town and he used the large piles of gold he found to bribe the Goblins into following him. General Grador was one of the most powerful Bandosians and owned massive armies, so from there, Bandos had stopped supporting him, knowing that he was able to hold his own. Grador didn't expect this because he thought his god cared for him. During the God Wars, Forinthry was one of the many sites where the armies of Bandos battled, trying to make as much chaos as possible. Then after a long battle with Saradomin and Armadil against Zaros, Zaros used the Stone of Jazz in a last effort to save himself, but Zaros annihilated Forinthry, scorching the Anima Mundi and waking Guthix. Guthix awoke to end the war, and had a mage freeze the Temple of Lost Ancients, known as the God Wars Dungeon. The God Wars dungeon has now been unfrozen, and the armies of different gods still fight there, but that's only because they don't know that the God Wars have ended for thousands of years. When the God Wars came to an end and the Edicts of Guthix were put into place beginning the Fourth Age, Bandos was visited by Guthix and ordered to leave. Knowing he had been beaten, Bandos agreed to leave peacefully with his followers for the time being and ordered his org to prepare for the journey to Ubiask. Guthix, however, denied them to leave with him, stating that they belonged in Gielinor now and deserved to be free of the tyranny of the gods. This infuriated the God War, who proceeded to attack Guthix, shouting that his followers were his property to be used as he pleased. Guthix, however, cast a spell, banishing Bandos from Gielinor along with most of the other gods, leaving their followers behind. After Bandos was banished from Gielinor, he returned to Ubiask, and furious at the end of the war, his banishment, and more prominently Guthix, he took out his anger at his followers there by invoking massive wars in the realm. For example, the Hobgoblins there built a magnificent statue of the finest resources on Ubiask for Bandos. He dismissed it and ordered the Hobgoblins to demolish it and smith weapons instead. This invoked a war which Bandos enjoyed very much. Bandos had accidentally allowed one of his wars to get out of hand, and all of life in Ubiask was wiped out as a result. What remained of his Gielinorian followers never knew this. They fought for Bandos at the promise of returning to Ubiask upon death. There is also a religion surrounding Bandos. For example, the Goblins, who are one of those Gielinorian followers, have a holy book that is dedicated to the teachings of Bandos. Here are some funny lines from the holy book that shows us how the Goblins feel about Bandos. In beginning, all gods have big war. Each god find army to fight for him. Big High War God not have army. Big High War God go to short bearded people and ask, will you fight in my army? But beardy short people say no, we fight for God of shiny light. Then Big War God go to demons and ask, will you fight in my army? But demons say no, we fight for God of dark fire. Then Big High War God go to tall people with keen blades and ask, will you fight in my army? But tall people with keen blades say no, some of us fight for God of shiny light, and some of us fight for God of dark fire, but none of us fight for you. Big High War God was very sad. He traveled east and west, north and south, across land looking for army to fight for him. Then goblins say, we fight for you. At that time, goblins very weak, very small, soft skin. Not like goblins today, but Big High War God say, I will make you my army. So Big High War God train goblins so they very strong. He give them good armor so they not be harmed. He make them strong in spirit so they not afraid of battle. He give them commanders so they know which way to go. He divide goblins into 12 tribes and send them into battle. The goblins think Bandos actually cared about them. We can read this in the line, he give them good armor so they not be harmed. Whilst in reality, Bandos just sends them into battles like bait. They also have several commandments that are very primitive. Enemies must die, not to run from battle, cowards must die, not to show mercy, merciful must die, not to doubt Big High War God, doubters must die, not to make own plans, thinkers must die. As you can see, all their commandments are based around war and death, making these teachings very dangerous. The Holy Book also tells us what goblins think about humans. Then all gods leave world, leave their armies behind, but goblins still soldiers, still fight. Goblins fight against tall people with keen blades. But tall people build cities with walls, they not want to fight. They not true soldiers like goblins. The goblins then fight a war called Battle of Plain of Mud, which will go into the next episode. But after that war, they went and made Goblin Village. Let's dive a bit deeper into his personality and his followers. Bandos was very powerful and manipulative, trying to find any way to create battles, and he enjoyed the bloodshed that followed. He could get extremely angry when things did not proceed as planned, or when he was defied. We could see this behavior when Guthix told him that he should leave his troops in Gielinor. He attacked a god that was clearly much stronger than him. Most beings who know of him, including other gods, viewed him as a barbaric and brutish because of the way he treated his followers, whom he viewed as disposable without remorse. Many of his followers are unintelligent, and they have been bred to follow him blindly from birth. His followers' main trait is strength, if not high numbers, generally at the cost of intelligence, making them valuable warriors who would listen to him blindly. The message he gives his followers as a sort of motto really show what he thinks of them. I am your god, I created you, you will worship me. He in fact didn't create them, but has been teaching them for generations. Bandos has one of the greatest populations of followers in all of Gielinor. Most of his followers are depicted as ugly and bad-tempered beings with low intelligence, although many of them are not inherently unintelligent, but are told not to think, because this is left to the high commanders. It's notable that Bandos actually bred a few of his followers for specific purposes. Some examples of this is that he bred the special breed of ogres for jungle survival, known as Jogers. Finally, we will look at the different races that Bandos used as soldiers, from the lowest to highest in rank. The lowest in rank are the Goblins. Despite this, they are one of the more intelligent of the Bandosian races, although very few modern day Goblins exhibit this intelligence, as their commandments tell them not to think for themselves. They are told that they are made by Bandos, while this is not true at all. They came from the realm of Ubiask and were made into soldiers. Most of the Goblins didn't adjust to the technical advancements in the 4th Age and made a village called Goblin Village next to Ice Mountain. And they've stayed there ever since and stayed aggressive and fight with each other over little things like the color of armor. The hobgoblins are a different breed of goblin and appear to be of lower intelligence than regular goblins. They admired Bandos the most and even built monuments for him from very expensive materials. The ogres are higher in rank. They inhabit the Feldip Hills and have known to enslave the Scavards. Their origin story and the wars that were fought there are going to be told in a different quest episode. One of the races that had high ranks were the Orks. Orks are brutal and aggressive, but slightly more intelligent. They were some of Bandos' most valued soldiers during the God Wars. Some Orks can still be found in the God Wars dungeon. Orgs are enormous orc-like giants. They were the single most powerful unit in his army, but the God Wars and the subsequent wars on Ubiask drove them near extinction. The most prominent of the Orgs known to have survived, General Grador. The highest in rank were the Cyclopes and Cyclos. Cyclopses and Cyclosi are large one-eyed eaters of humans native to the Ushanko Isles. Virtually nothing about them is known, except they originate from the islands of Cyclosis. Currently, several Cyclopses can be found in the Warriors Guild, the God Wars dungeon, and one in Ardoyan Zoo. The race that also helped him were the Trolls. Trolls are the least intelligent of all of the races to follow Bandos, and they're the only one of the large races that came from Gielinor and followed Bandos. They don't serve Bandos anymore and still live very primitively. So this was the history behind one of the evilest gods in RuneScape. What we might learn from this history is that the followers of a certain belief or person aren't necessarily evil themselves, but are learned to act this way. I've been your host, Theoatrix, and I'd like to thank T-Shirt for the opportunity to take part in one of his lore videos. Don't forget to like the video if you enjoyed it, and subscribe if you want to learn more lore. Have a great day.